So there we go. Welcome to the New Zealand preview on the Shiny Side podcast. And this is the last of the previews we'll be doing, and the World Cup starts tomorrow. So at the end of this episode, we will also slightly talk about the New Zealand-England game coming up. With me today, I have Imran Aslam, who's been on the show before, avid cricket fan and a very dear friend of mine. Imran, welcome to the show. How you feel? The World Cup is less than a day away now.
Thank you, Faris. Good to be back with you. Honestly, it doesn't feel like, at least for me, they're starting tomorrow. There's been so much cricket happening over the past few weeks with the Asia Cup and then the warm-up. So it just seems like a continuation of all of that. So it doesn't really feel like it's starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I know
But
what
I
you
think
mean. I
once it
think these
starts, then
days,
we'll get into it.
that's the thing. I think there's so much stuff that happens in the world that until something starts, you don't actually feel it. But I think it'll all hit us tomorrow. And
Yeah, exactly.
it starts over with England versus New Zealand. That was the last game of the last World Cup, which was the most epic end, perhaps, of any game ever. So, right. So, if we can have anything like that, it'll be an amazing start to the World Cup. But just starting up about New Zealand, right? So, we have to talk about this, right? But New Zealand has made it to the last two ODI World Cup finals. They seem to be there in the semi-finals every single time. Why do we insist on calling them the dark horses? What do they have to do to lose that tag?
Yeah, I know it's an interesting one, honestly, because as you said, they keep making semifinals and finals. I think just maybe the fact that they've never won a major tournament, keeping aside Champions Trophy, I think in its very early stages, and then obviously the Test Championship, but that they've never won a major ODI tournament. I think that's probably they need to
And
go
I
to the
think
last mile and shed that tide.
to be honest, if they were to win this one somehow, that would really be legacy defining, right? Because we would need to stop calling them dark horses then, hopefully.
Yeah, it would definitely be, and I think if they win this one with the team that they have, it would really be, you know, a very great last hurrah to all these guys, because they have quite an aging team actually. Like they have, I think, a few players from 2015. They have quite a few players who played in 2019.
So I was been fixated on how I was thinking about how England has eight guys who won the World Cup from the 11 probably playing tomorrow. But it turns out New Zealand has six, but they also have five of them who are also there in 2015 final. So New Zealand is actually perhaps more of a legacy team, and this is literally the last. I mean, they also have a bunch of new additions, to be honest, right? So guys like Conway, Glenn Phillips, who I think is possibly one of the best finds right now but yeah, I guess getting into New Zealand a little bit, right? Let's look at them now. So I think one of the things I saw, and I'm going to push up the squad just to have a quick look at this. When I looked at New Zealand squad, right, one of the first thing I noticed was that I've been putting up these teams and they have the most people in the all-rounder category. So they have a good five names in there, which just shows you the amazing balance they have. And at the top, I guess the big news there is Williamson and Saudi are both not fit to start. So Williamson has played the warm-up games, but he coming back from a leg fracture that happened about 6 months ago. But he won't be playing for the first couple of games. Saudi's fractured his finger last month, but somehow he's still in the squad. So I think they're hoping that they will be fit at some point. So I think if you look at the squad, I think that's the thing that stands out to me. I think other than that, also if you think about it, I think their all-rounder game is strong. Their power game seems to be better than before. I think guys like Mark Chapman, who can bowl left arm spin but clear the boundary at will. I think guys like Glenn Phillips in the middle, who seems to be in great form. Simon Dool called Latham their best batsman. He said he's one of the best players of spin around and New Zealand's best batsman over Ken Williamson. So if Simon Dool is saying that, I'm not one to argue, but that's high praise. So it looks like their batting is decent. I think on the bowling front, Saudi, I know he's injured, but to be honest, he was unlikely to make the 11 anyway. In fact, he hasn't been the first 11 in white ball for a while. He was never, if you remember the World Cup final, he took the catch to dismiss Butler 4 years ago, but he was on as a substitute. So he wasn't even in the 11 then. I think he's unlikely to start in the 11, even if fit. So it's not such a big miss first start, but if they have an injury or two, that could become a problem. So yeah, I
think they'll
go on.
I think they'll probably rotate their quicks around, and Saudi will get a look in later in the tournament. But yeah, you're right. He doesn't necessarily feature in the starting 11. Obviously, with Bolt, Ferguson, Henry, they've got three good quicks. And interestingly, they have quite a strong spin lineup, which is unusual maybe for a New Zealand team with the Sodhi, Ravindra, and Santner. So they've got three good spinners with them.
Yeah, and keep in mind that
It's quite interesting.
Santner and Ravindra can also bat a bit, so I think it's not that hard for them to absorb them in the 11.
Yeah. So there's a high chance that they can go in with a three spinners and three quicks because of the numbers of all-rounders they have, which gives them quite a good balance.
Yeah, and Ravindra actually opened the batting in the warm-up against us, and he actually did quite well. He I think he scored a 50, a very quick one. So
that was a bit of a surprise to him for him to come out and open the batting,
but I mean he's good enough to do that.
So that in one of the main games.
But you know what I mean. But if he's probably be a great number 7 or 8 or whatever they could bat him. If you just quickly go on to their fixtures, right? So they obviously start against the so-called form team England, and then they have Netherlands. I think what I like about New Zealand's schedule is they might maybe one of the few teams who take the least amount of flights because they have a lot of consecutive games. So they have 2 games in Chennai back to back, 2 in Dharamsala back to back, and 2 in Bengaluru. So they may be the team flying around the least in India, which I think is definitely pleasant for them. They start with England tomorrow, which is obviously a tough game. Then they have Netherlands, Bangladesh, Afghanistan. You know, Chennai is the most sprint-friendly ground in India, and they're playing both Bangladesh and Afghanistan there. New Zealand is not the kind of team that you expect to slip up against the smaller sides, but that is a potential banana peel. What do you think?
I don't think so. I think I would, keeping the England game aside, I would bank on them to take the next 3 games, even if they're Chennai. And again, we're talking about their spinners, and all of their spinners have been doing well recently. So they have a good spin lineup to go in with against both Bangladesh and Afghanistan. So I would expect them to actually win those 3 games, and it's very interesting then that they then go up against the two other big sides, India and Australia, and both of them in Dharamsala.
Yeah, which is a smaller ground, and there's a bit of help for seamers there. So I can imagine Bolt having a good time. But
exactly. So that could be interesting with their pace attack against the Indian batting in Dharamsala could be interesting. If New Zealand puts India into bat first, it could actually be quite an interesting game and could be a tough challenge for India, that one.
Yeah. Also, I think what's interesting here is, so I think if you look at the schedule, so they're playing, knowing New Zealand, they would always beat the bottom 3 and then maybe beat the top 3, right? So they would probably, assuming they beat Netherlands, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and they lose to England, India, Australia, which is not a given. So they're sitting on 3 wins, and then they have 3 more games against South Africa, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. I think 2 of them, I mean, I guess if they're in that position, then they probably have to win all 3. So I think what they would want is, again, win against the 3 lowest ranked side, but at least win one of England, India, Australia. I think if they can do that, they'll probably be in a good position to qualify for the last 3 games.
So they always tend to do well against Australia. Well, maybe not in the World Cups itself, especially 2015 final, but generally they've actually, even in 2015, they beat Australia in the league stages, right? They went unbeaten. They've done well against Australia, and I think for some reason they lift their game up against Australia. So it could be interesting. It would be an even Steven game, but I think there is a chance that they could win the Australia game.
I think so.
I don't see them beating India unless, again, there's very high assistance for the seamers and Bolt runs through the Indian lineup, but highly. I think Australia is one they could win.
I feel like the thing with New Zealand is, if New Zealand's playing Australia in the league, I think Australia New Zealand could actually take that game. But if it comes to the knockout, then I would back Australia. And I think it's the opposite with India. I think if New Zealand's playing India in a league, I would say India 9 out of 10. But if it becomes a knockout game, then New Zealand, I think, are really in it. So it's just weird how these things work, but that's just how I think it could play out potentially.
Yeah, it's a knockout game, and obviously 2019 will be fresh in everyone's mind.
Exactly.
What happened to India over 2-day semi-finals.
On the India preview, we spoke about how India has now played 8 ICC knockouts in the last 10 years, lost 6 of them. The 2 wins they have are against Bangladesh. So clearly there would be some pressure there in that situation if they were playing New Zealand or anybody. But I think moving on to tomorrow's game quickly, let's quickly have a look at that. We have, of course, the first game of the World Cup finally happening, like we said. It's the big one from last time around, New Zealand, England. And I think before we kind of get into it, Imran, how do you feel about the first game? How do you see it playing out?
So I think obviously it's the first game, and so excited about that. And New Zealand are always, they will bring their A game from the get-go. They always do that. They're not like a slow starter. So it should be a good match, but I think on current form, I would back England to take this. I mean, if you
Yeah,
just
I
go
think
back to the recent series,
interestingly,
3-1
they
England.
just played. Yeah, they just played 4 games against each other, so they know exactly what to
Yeah.
expect. I think a big part of
Mm.
tomorrow will be how well the teams, like you said, how in tune are they with the conditions, with the tournament, etc., etc., and how well do they turn out. Of course, I think
Mm.
Williamson is not available for the first game, and I think news coming out is Stokes also has an ankle, so he may not be
So,
available as well.
yeah.
So let's see
Mm.
how that comes about. I think if you look at the likely 11s, I have them up on the. So again, this is my view on the likely 11. I feel like the England one. I mean, I think with Stokes out, they only have one backup batsman, which is Root. So which is Harry Brooks. So he comes in at
Brook,
4. So
Harry
it's
Brook, yeah.
Bairstow, Malan, Root, Brook at 4, Butler probably at 5, Livingston 6. I think it's a Moeen / Curran for me, given that they're playing New Zealand with a fair bit of left-handers. I feel like they will probably go with Moeen. Having said that, if they feel like there's a lot of assistance for the spin or for swing bowling, or if it's a two-pace track, they could bring Curran for Moeen. And what's your take on the England 11? Would you do anything differently?
No, I think yeah, the obviously Stokes not playing is big for them, but I think it's a good chance for Brook to make a name for himself and cement his place in the 11 for the rest of the tournament. I think most of it pretty much picks itself. I think Moeen is probably going to get a few games, and they'd probably be keen to for him to get in early in the tournament.
Yeah.
I know, and with his batting, especially his experience in the IPL, opening the batting for his IPL
Chennai.
team.
Yes.
I think with his Chennai, with his experience, I think they would want Moeen to be in the 11, not
Makes
just from
sense.
bowling but from batting perspective.
Makes sense.
And I wouldn't be surprised even if they tried Moeen up the order even in some cases.
I think they've learned their lesson. If you send Moeen in to finish a game off, he may not be the best, reliable person, but I think what's a much better use of him is to send him in the middle overs to take on and change the game in a short span of time. That does really well, right? So and I think the fact that they have the 4 guys we haven't picked in the 11 here is of course Stokes, but then there's David Willey. There is Gus Atkinson, who's pretty quick. So I feel like Wood, they won't play in every game, but I think whenever Wood sits out, he will probably come in. And yeah, so that's England for you. New Zealand, there's no Williamson, so it does look a touch light, perhaps. I feel like Bolt, Ferguson. I mean, they don't have Ferguson they don't have Saudi and Williamson available, right? So I think bowling attack of Ferguson, Bolt, Henry, and Saudi and Santner looks pretty good to me, backed up by Neesham somewhat. I think the batting looks okay, a bit light without Williamson, but Phillips, I think, is the informed guy. Mitchell has been batting really well. According to Simon Doull, Latham is the best batsman. So I think this will look all right.
Yeah, I think they have, even without Williamson, it's pretty strong batting lineup.
I think my take on this New Zealand side is this is not the kind of batting lineup that can make 350 for you. So I think if England bat first and score something massive like that, then I think they're pretty much out of it. But I think if this is more of a 280 pace 280 game, they could be in it.
They strolled to 350 against us in 42 overs in the warm-up.
I mean, it's a warm-up, right? Things change. So let's see how. I think also, by the way, from a Pakistan point of view, this game is super interesting because it's in Ahmedabad. So I want to see how the pitch plays, because that's where we play India in 10 days.
Yeah, so I was apparently there's 2 different kinds of pitches in the stadium. There's 2 different types of soils used, and the 2
I believe
pitches,
every pitch has 2 different types of soil used. Yeah. So I think they have that.
Yeah.
I know.
Apparently, the pitch that they're playing on tomorrow was used for the last IPL final, in which I think you had 350 odd runs scored in 35 overs. So if that's anything to go by, it's a high scoring one.
Yeah, I mean, and so let's see. I mean, I think looking forward to the game, looking forward to things get started. And again, thank you for joining us again, Imran. I think we're going to wrap up here, and we'll be back tomorrow night right after the game for a review of the game, and also to preview Pakistan's game against Netherlands the day after. So we'll be seeing you from tomorrow. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon.